Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I think people are still joining. Welcome to the global introduction of the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative. I'm Hala Kilani from REN21. There are people still joining, but I think we will start to make the best time, most of the time of this session. Just a few housekeeping points before we start. Please rename yourself with your name, your organization. You're free also to put in the chat where you're calling from. Please keep the videos on and mute yourself if you're not speaking. And if you have any questions, we'll have a Q&A session, but you're also welcome to put a question in the chat. So today we're going to be discussing the Champions Initiative with an inspiring host of speakers. The event will be structured around two panels that Rana will introduce and moderate. The first panel will talk about the purpose, the vision, how the idea started, and the strategy forward. And then we will hear from the perspectives of the private sector, government, the diplomatic sphere. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Rana, REN21’s Executive Director.
Hello, everybody. Welcome from my side. So my name is Rana Adib. I'm heading the REN21 Secretariat here in Paris, and I'm very, very excited to finally have this global presentation of the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative. And in particular, also having the discussion with many players who have been very fundamental in kicking off basically this initiative. So I think to kick us off, I would like to quickly give you an overview. So REN21, who we are. Some of you might know, others might not. So REN21 is a global network of governments, industry, NGOs, and science and academia that is dedicated to not only move from fossil fuel to renewable energy on the fuel side, but also build a renewable-based economy for prosperous societies. And that is something that obviously means addressing some structural parts and systems change. But what is special about it is that REN21 has 120 institutional members, so from these different stakeholder groups, spanning across the different sectors, the different regions. And this really allows to have quite a general and holistic approach to the transition. What is also special is that it has lots of renewable energy champions and also change makers as part of the community. And the renewable energy champions who are part of the Renewable Energy Champion Initiative are special champions, I think. So Ramón, James, you're special champions because you're political leaders. The Renewable Energy Champion Initiative is really focusing very much on unlocking high-level political leadership and bringing strategic support and to government that are in place today. Now, I will come back to this later, but I think it's really important to underline why this is so important today as a context. We have recently launched a Renewables Global Status Report, and again, we see that we have record-breaking progress. 740 gigawatts of renewable power capacities were added in 2024. It's the largest annual increase in date. And still, we're far away of meeting the global goal of tripling renewable energy capacities by 2030. And this is already showing that we need to first accelerate deployment, but obviously also enabling infrastructures. But there is a real question, especially in the current time and geopolitical situation, around the systems change, misinformation, disinformation, the dominant narrative, but also the fact that we need to basically build the trust in the transition. And I think this is where the Renewable Champions Initiative also comes from. So who are the champions? These are champions and former ministers, state secretaries, senior officials from global South countries that have actually revolutionized the energy system in their own countries. They basically know that it's possible, they can inspire, they also know the challenges and what is needed to make this happen. And the initiative is really focusing on mobilizing these players, their experience, their insights, but also their trusted voices to really provide peer-to-peer political leadership. And obviously building on real-world experiences because they have done this in their countries. So we have for the moment 2 champions who are part of the Renewable Energy Champion Initiative. James Fletcher, who is a former Minister of Public Service, Sustainable Development, Energy, Science and Technology from St. Lucia in the Caribbean. But also Ramón Mendez Galain, former Energy Secretary in Uruguay. Both of them have clearly advanced the energy sector or modernized the energy sector with policies, legislation, but also transformed basically the power sector massively and contributed to economic developments in their countries. So I'm very excited to have both of them with us today. I think what is also important, this is a network that is meant to grow. So over the time, we will bring on other champions because obviously they exist in all regions of the world. And it's also very clear that the objective is to build on these great examples, but kind of create this movement and the trust that the transition is happening and make it happen everywhere in the world, I guess. So without further ado, I think I'm going to move to our first panel. I'm very excited to have basically Jimmy Fletcher with me, as well as Ramón Mendez Galain, but also Rebecca Collier, who is the Executive Director of PI and Renew 2030, and also a Senior Advisor to Crux Alliance, and Andrea Guerrero, Director and Field Innovation from Growwald Climate Fund. And to have both of them, all 4 of us, or all 4 of them with me. So welcome to all 4 of you. Thanks for joining us. It's really an important event, I think, because it's a great, inspiring initiative. And I think I would like to kick this off first with Ramón and Jimmy to hear I think like first your thoughts and your perspectives on the initiative, but in particular also the stories of your countries and how this basically is important to drive the change globally and in different countries, and how you can engage with governments in place. Jimmy, do you want to start?
I guess I can. Hi, Rana. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are, or good evening. First of all, let me start off by saying how excited I am to be part of this Renewable Energy Champions Initiative and how honored I am to have been chosen as one of the first 2 champions, together with someone who's become my very good friend over the last 2 years, Ramón Mendez. For us in the Caribbean, and particularly in my country, St. Lucia, this initiative is extremely important. I can go back to my own experience when I was a minister, became a minister for energy, among other portfolios, as Rana pointed out, in December 2011. And 2012 was a very interesting year. 2012, I had a steady procession of investors coming through my door. Energy was a sexy topic, and had investors coming through my door offering all sorts of things. And they ran the full gamut, from people who were maybe no more than glorified snake oil salesmen. They would come to me and say, we can develop geothermal in your country in 7 months because we drill for oil, and that's what we've done. So we can do the same thing for geothermal. We have the blueprint. When I know that the gestation period for geothermal is at least 7 years. To other people who are a lot more realistic, but not with the right technologies that we could have used. And the dilemma that I had was deciphering what's real and what is not real. Who are the people who are genuine and who are not? And we were building an energy unit at the time. So we didn't have the resources that had the experience, the maturity to be able to suss out what was real and what was not, as I said. And fortunately, we had partners, international partners that we turned to, people like the Clinton Climate Initiative and at the time, Richard Branson's Carbon War Room. But what an initiative like this, like the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative, would have done for me in 2012 would have given me access to people at the same level who have gone through this and who would have been able to say to me, okay, These are the pitfalls you need to avoid. These are the reputable people because we have dealt with them before. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to plan out your transition. You need to ensure that you have a robust legislative and regulatory framework, because that's very important for you to attract investors, particularly when you have a monopoly incumbent utility that is so embedded and everything revolves around that. The only way an investor can feel confident is if there is that robust regulatory transparent framework. You also need to have the right mix of renewables. For example, when I approached the utility company on this, they said to me that the maximum level of intermittent renewables that the grid could accommodate was 5%. And I found that that was a very unambitious target. And then when we did our national energy transition strategy, we found that it was a lot more than 5%. It was actually closer to 30%. But again, you know, you're really being held hostage by people who have a vested interest in this. And what an initiative like this would have done would have been to help me avoid some wasted months. Fortunately, we did I decided that let's take a step back. Let's plan out how this should happen. Let's also bring all the investors to the table so that people are not tripping over each other to do the sexy items and leaving the unsexy ones behind, like legislative reform. So that helped us. But I did that really, I don't know, maybe by some divine inspiration. I wasn't told that I should do it that way. And I think having people like Ramón and others, who have done this before, being now available to new ministers, as we did, for example, at the Caribbean Renewable Energy Forum when we did the launch in Miami a few months ago. We spoke to one or two ministers, particularly the minister from Grenada, a very good friend of mine, Minister Karen James, who is a new minister. And I said to her, my goal is to make sure that you avoid the same mistakes that I made and that you don't waste the time that I wasted. So this initiative is timely, particularly given that the Caribbean has set itself very ambitious renewable energy targets, which it has not met. We are supposed to be 47% renewable energy by 2027. Right now, we're somewhere around 14%. So we are woefully short for a variety of reasons. So helping the Caribbean to move in that direction, given the very transformative impact of the transition. In most of our countries, we pay upwards of 40 US cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. And for economies that are driven by tourism, that are looking to make greater inroads in the digital economy, that are looking for value added in agriculture, electricity is a very important, but unfortunately very costly input. So, ensuring that we can break that nut and actually get that cost of energy down would do wonders for the economies of the Caribbean, and also for people who would now have more disposable income in their pockets. So this initiative is timely, it's important, it's critical, and I'm really happy to be part of it.
So hello, I think it's my turn to jump in. And thank you, first of all, for this convening. It's really, really a big honor, a big pleasure for me to be part of this initiative. First of all, to join Jimmy with this. I mean, Jimmy, he's a reference in the Caribbean region, and believe me, I've been with him in the Caribbean Renewable Energy Forum, and he's not a reference, he's a legend there. So the fact of sharing with him this responsibility is something very important for me. And of course, I would like to thank everybody that make this possible, like Rebecca, Andrea, Peter. I think Peter Wood is over there, Shink, and of course, all the effort of the REN21 Secretariat to put this in place. And in fact, being here, for me, is a possibility, as Jimmy was saying, to share experiences. Share experiences mean trying not to make the same mistakes and trying to go faster in this transition process all over the world, and particularly all over my region. And if I'm talking about what are the lessons that I can share in this framework, what kind of message I can bring, in fact, I think there are two main lessons learned from the process in my country, Uruguay. The first one, perhaps the most important one, is that transition is possible. And not only it is possible, but it brings tremendous positive impact to our at national level, not just because of the global climate issue, but also at national level. And take, for example, what happened in my country. Uruguay is a small country, yes, with only 3.5 million inhabitants, but we dramatically changed our mix. Last year we ended with 99.1% of renewables in the mix. and almost half of that being non-manageable sources as wind and solar, variable sources, half of that, and this work. So this is the first point. We don't have a single battery or energy storage. It's just the complementarity of different renewable sources. So this works. This is possible. This is my first very important comment. The second positive comment is that this is much cheaper than the traditional fossil fuels-based system. We halved the cost of producing electricity making this transition. And not only we have the cost, but we stabilize the cost, because now we are absolutely independent on fluctuation of energy commodity prices. And this is the panacea for finance ministers in order to have this spectacular stability in the cost of producing electricity in a country. And on top of that, we created 50,000 new jobs, which is about 3% of the total labor force in the country. We create a new capacity of local industries that now are exporting what they learn in the Uruguayan processes to other countries, not only in the region, but also in other parts of the world. So renewables can deliver. The renewables are ready, the renewables are the best, and the renewables works. So this is perhaps the first message I would like to share today, and in this job that you are putting me here. But there is a second message. There is a second lesson learned, which is even considering these tremendous positive capacities, transition is not going to happen spontaneously, because today our power system has a tremendous bias to favor fossil fuels. And this has to be changed, because if we don't change this, transition will not happen. The market itself cannot make it, because with inappropriate rules, things are not working. So we need to redefine, as we did it in Uruguay, we need to redefine the way we plan the system, the way we expand the system, the way we operate the system, and perhaps most important, the market design need to be redefined, because the market design is based on the characteristics of thermal fossil fuel generation, which has absolutely nothing to do to the one of we needed for renewable to compete in the same footing with the traditional sources. So these are the two main messages I would like to share to my colleagues. First, transition is possible, and it's a tremendous positive input for your economy, for your development. And second, you have to make a lot of things in order for things to happen.
Rana, you're muted.
I think I'm muted.
Oh, wow. This still happens, you see, like many years after lots of Zoom calls. Sorry for that. So no, thanks a lot to both of you. And I think to both of you first for the inspiration, because I think this is really something we really need, especially in these times where lots of players might question whether this can happen. But then also to really underline that it's not going to happen like this, and that it requires targeted action and activities. And I think, and thanks also very much, Jimmy, on highlighting what would have been helpful 11 years ago, or 2011, as you said, because I think this is already indicating also what the Renewable Champions Initiative brings. It's not only the inspiration, but it is targeted support. It is capacity building. It is also through the network access to technical financial support, and a lot of experience. So, and I guess like also the understanding how to build a political case, because we're speaking about policymakers. Let me turn to you, Rebecca. I guess like Rebecca and Andrea from Pi Side and Global Climate Fund. You have been early supporters, initiators of the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative. I would be keen to hear from your side. Maybe we'll start with you, Rebecca. A bit the background. How did this idea originate? Why this connection to REN21? And what criteria have been chosen actually to also choose the champions? Because that's obviously something very important.
Thank you. And thank you to Jimmy and Ramón, and thank you to you, Rana. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Rebecca Collier, and I work in philanthropy, and we very rarely put ourselves out on the front foot like this. And so it's an honor to do so. And often the very best ideas are the ones that seem really patently are obvious and logical when you hear them being spoken about. And just hearing James and Ramón speaking about this idea, it fills my heart with a feeling of how obviously useful this initiative is, because for many years, all of us who are developers, financiers, technical experts in the technical assistance space, or elsewhere, driving the renewables agenda, driving the climate agenda, have been talking about the phenomenal potential for renewables. But the last 10 years, as we've just been hearing, have been characterized by doing the real work. And so now we are in an implementation phase, a phenomenal implementation phase, with really real world, realpolitik, and real implementation barriers in front of us. So no longer is the theory our challenge. Actually, it's the real job of implementation that's in front of us and in front of ministers all around the world. And that is why I think that having a network of people who have done this before, who've actually done this for real, sat in government with those challenges in front of them, that's why it came to life for us in philanthropy. So often we heard that the people that had that experience had no travel budget, no place to convene, no place and no platform to enable them to tell that story. And we collectively heard over and over again, we would love to hear from Jimmy Fletcher. We would love to hear from Ramón Mendez. We would love to hear from other leaders around the world who've done this, but we can't get hold of them, because once they cycle out of government, they have other calls and pressures on their time. And so this comes then to the sort of criteria for selection. Only very few people are prepared to give their time back to the cause after they've had such prominent roles as ministers. And both Jimmy and Ramón have shown incredible personal leadership and courage in saying this is, as it were, the route they would like to follow in their post-ministerial career. That is not something that everybody wants to do. It's an incredible act of generosity and vision and to others. And so that is one of the key criteria, alongside actually having done the work, that we think is one of the key characteristics of the renewable energy champions. And the other thing is just the untapped demand. We are hearing every day from new ministers when they come into office that they are not able to navigate the complexities of the transition with confidence. And the way that I think one gets confidence is hearing that it's possible. So we as Philanthropy, with support from many in the network, were listening. We were in listening mode, and this seemed like a really obvious strategic thing to do with philanthropy. And so then we thought, well, how do we best house the renewable energy champions within the network of the great many organizations that work on renewable energy? And REN21, with its unique mix of dialogue, stakeholder engagement, its neutrality, and its multilateral partnership, felt to us to be the natural home for the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative, to provide the space in which Ramón and Jimmy could curate their engagements with other geographies, and that could be, as it were, the home and the brand for the Renewable Energy Champions. So we've been delighted that generosity and that integrity and that vision has come to the fore from Jimmy and Ramón. And I think that gives us a flavor of who else one might want to invite to be a renewable energy champion in the future. People that have had that experience, people that have that generosity, and people that have that integrity. And that is my way of saying thank you to both of you for sticking with us as we've scoped this out, as we've worked out exactly what we think the best engagement framework is, and as we're now for the second time introducing you as the first renewable energy champions on this call today. It's only been possible, I might say, through partnership. And I think that partnership is with you all. it's with REN21, but it's also with our dear fellow funders on this journey. And I think that's the natural segue for me to turn to Andrea Guerrero. Thank you all so much, and congratulations on this big milestone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Rebecca. Andrea, and maybe you could complement this, but also specifically speak about the, you see, why this peer-to-peer political support is so essential. You see, looking at this from Global Climate Fund.
Yes, thank you, Rana. Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to the champions. Of course, I'm really happy and honored to be here today to celebrate this launch. Although I have to say, the champions had launched themselves many years ago. I had the pleasure of working with them and meeting them many years ago, and they were superstars as ministers, advocates, strong voices, and they did not stop. They have not taken a break since. We are now just giving them a new platform to do the work that they were already doing incredibly well. This idea came about just looking at the gap that existed in terms of credible, relatable voices in the world. In developing countries, I worked in the government of my country for around 12 years in Colombia. And you would have experts and ministers from other countries come and talk to our government. And it was useful, but always there was that doubt of, you know, the circumstances in these other countries are so different, or the experts don't know the challenges a minister has and the pulls that they have from all the different sides. So having a voice that is very relatable, as Jimmy and Ramón said, somebody that's been literally in their shoes or figuratively in their shoes and suffered what they're suffering and being pressed by the same pressures is very useful. So we wanted to give that platform, give that support, and REN21 was a perfect partner to do this with. And what we see our champions do is advocate for the policies that are needed, as Jimmy mentioned, also advocate for support that developing countries are needed and act as this bridge between developing countries where they're hearing what the problems are, what the gaps are, and using their access that they have with potential funders, multilateral organizations to signal where those gaps exist and connect the dots. They are catalysts for exchanging best practices and showing that things can be done and showing how they were done. And they're an inspiration really for a lot of ministers. And I've seen it already in a couple of countries in the region, in Latin America and the Caribbean, where even if experts were saying the same things, it just comes in a different way because it's somebody with that high level experience, but also the technical capabilities to really address the issues that countries are facing. So we're very happy to be part of this initiative, very proud of the champions, very excited to just see who comes in as champions from other regions of the world where we really need those voices as well. Although our champions are now extending onto other regions as well. But we would want to make this initiative stronger, bigger, more impactful. And we know it will be. We'll see, as a result of this initiative, faster adoption of renewable energies in many countries. Investments go up by their work with the different stakeholders. And with that, I'm preaching to the choir, but all of the benefits that come from energy independence, from reduction of greenhouse gases, reduction of pollution that affects the most vulnerable populations. So really this initiative is all we could dream of in terms of a high level, high impact initiative to work with. And thank you very much for having me as part of it.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And allow me a quick follow-up question, because being from the region where our champions are also from, where the first champions are from, I would be really interested to hear, because obviously we see the peer-to-peer engagement to national governments, but also it's very clear that when we're speaking about the transitions, it's also about regional strategies. And I would be curious to hear how you see basically the significance of the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative also at the regional level.
Yeah, I think having these voices in regional fora is extremely important. And it is a counterweight to other voices that we're unfortunately hearing very heavily pushing for fossil fuels, for gas, which in many cases is just really not in the interest of the countries that are sitting in those spaces. So hearing the experiences in these countries, the experience in Uruguay, where they've made the change, they didn't have the negative impacts that a lot of naysayers might mention in national dialogues is extremely important. And building that sense of regional progress is incredibly important. Our region is the first region to have zero pipeline on coal, for example, and it has all the potential of being the first region in the world to transition to majority renewables, and we need to enable that. And I think that showing how it's done, rather than just setting targets and talking, but really walking the walk, is the way to get there.
Thank you. Rebecca, a quick follow-up question for you also. So peer-to-peer political support is essential to accelerate the national transitions, right? So you highlighted this. So specifically on the acceleration, but also acknowledging that acceleration also means that we're not only looking at the generation, but we're broadening it. What are your thoughts on, you see, like next steps and how the champions can support here?
Well, I think today is a really important part of this, because as there is more visibility on the incredible experience that Jimmy and Ramón have had, I think the more demand will come from economies around the world and in the region. And so too will other ministers and former ministers feel that this could be a pathway for them. And this is an invitation today. If in your networks you know anyone who's cycling out of government, who's doing this type of work, that is wondering about their next steps, and particularly if they come from regions with a different language base or a different geographic location, then we would be really delighted to do the matchmaking between philanthropy and REN21 and the existing champions. So that's an absolutely an open invitation to this network to help us think about the future champions. And also, I think that we're beginning to see, all of us as a network, that renewables reach far deeper beyond the power sector into other demand sectors, into the transportation sector, into buildings, into industry, and that we have even greater potential than we thought before for renewables to affect everybody's daily livelihoods. And Ramón and I did a panel earlier this year on electrification, and I was amazed to hear that not only is Ramón a renewables champion, but he's also something of an electrification champion as well. And so those things are going hand in hand. The real economy is showing the way for that. Consumer-led, consumer benefit renewables are touching into other sectors too. And so if I want to leave everybody with an inspiring thought, which is not only to look at what these people have done already, but what they're continuing to do, and to invite other people to join us on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jimmy and Ramón, turning back to you. You have heard so your roles, the expectations also, the perspectives. So from your, I mean, obviously I think the initiative is really about supporting other countries, right, in engaging. So what do you hope to bring to these countries through the Champions Initiative? Also fully acknowledging that you're not only participating in Champions Initiative, but you also have you're wearing other hats too, right? And how is this going to work very concretely? I think we had the regional launch basically at the Caribbean, at the Caribbean Renewable Energy Forum earlier this year. There were already lots of bilateral discussions and discussions with regional governments. So how does this work concretely? Because I think that's also interesting for our audience and participants and partners to understand, because the idea, obviously, and I think that's really important, it's a network, it's a collaborative undertaking, and it is also about how can basically other players build on you and specifically activate the Renewable Energy Champions initiative.
Ramón, you want to start?
Yes, why not? Well, yes, thank you. And thank you. As you always saying, I mean, this is a kind of continuity of what we were already doing for the last years. It's an amplifying possibility of doing much better than we were doing before. So what are we doing? For example, in my case, I'm running a nonprofit organization which is called EV, and what we are doing is working with governments hand to hand with them, in an holistic way, trying to understand what are the caveats that need to be understood in order to really make progress in the transition. So what we are expecting is once we have discussed with ministers or with high officials what is going on in this country, trying to build a tailor-made plan in order to understand what this country needs in order to make the transition possible. And this, once again, is a holistic message, because sometimes we think it's just making, for example, some minor changes in regulations, or we need new contracts, or you need just new bidding processes. But it's much more than that. We need some time to redefine our institutional framework, our capacity building. So it's an overall necessity to refocus the country to make the transition possible. But before all of this, before entering in the game of the transition, of building the complete transformative ecosystem, before that, we need to rephrase the narrative. Because as we were all saying, there is a dominant narrative. This dominant narrative is saying, well, what happened in Spain was because of renewables. Renewables are, at the end of the day, they are more expensive because you always need batteries. So these kinds of narratives that makes think sometimes decision makers that transition is perhaps the not best solution for them. It's just something that we need for climate change and nothing more than that. So putting the new narrative in place and trying to highlight at the national level what are the benefits of the transition, it's something that it is crucial that in our work, this is what we are mainly expecting to do. So first of point, I mean, if you have doubts, we can tell you why a transition in your country is the best solution for your national level. And then what are the whole things that need to be changed, considering how to change your regulatory system, how to change your market design, how to change your institutional framework, what kind of lesson we learn from our own processes and working in different countries all over the world, trying to do exactly the same. So this is the kind of message that we can bring, and we are already beginning to bring. And we hope this will accelerate transition and making less mistakes in many of countries, particularly in the global south.
Yeah, and I guess for me in the Caribbean, it's really, first of all, there's an appreciation. I think people don't understand the Caribbean. You know, we look at the Caribbean, it's a set of beautiful islands that people come to, that people vacation at. My country, St. Lucia, is the #1 wedding and honeymoon destination in the Caribbean. So that's what we look at the Caribbean that way, through those lens. And we think, okay, they're all similar, but they're not. And that's one of the things I think this Renewable Energy Champions initiative is so important for, because it recognizes that there is not one tailor-made solution. So, for example, Dominica is pushing very aggressively towards developing a geothermal resource. In fact, the government has said that on Christmas Day this year, the 25th of December, it will commission its geothermal plant. Barbados is moving very aggressively with distributed solar PV. And in fact, it has a backlog of solar PV that's waiting to come onto the grid, and it can't come on because the grid does not have the capacity to absorb it. Jamaica is looking at independent power producers with particularly with a focus on wind. And St. Lucia is kind of a mix, you know, but the focus right now is on modernizing our energy legislation. So for someone from the outside looking in at the islands would think, okay, there's just one template that can work in all of them, and there isn't. So what this initiative does is the local intelligence, understanding the players, understanding the scenario, understanding the regional ecosystem, but also the national circumstances, understanding that in some countries you have utilities that are privately owned, in some countries you have utilities that are owned by the government, and in some countries you have utilities that are public-private partnerships. And how do you navigate that landscape to ensure that the utility is brought on board, because the utility is a very important player in all of this. All of these utilities are buttressed by long-term electricity supply acts that give them monopolies for generation, transmission, and distribution. So the last thing you want is a utility digging its heels in and saying, I'm not cooperating. Or if you're going to force me to, then you now have to pay me for stranded assets because you're asking me to move in a direction that the law was not set up for me to move in. I was told to generate electricity using the best possible source, which is, for me, fossil fuels. So it's having that understanding to go in there and create bespoke solutions for each country. The other thing is that fortunately, I wear many hats. So I'm also the climate envoy for the Caribbean community. So I'm the climate envoy for 14 countries in the Caribbean. So that nexus between climate and energy is a very important one. And we've always said in the Caribbean that although we are not major greenhouse gas emitters, collectively the Caribbean contributes less than 0.2% to global emissions of greenhouse gases. But we think it's morally important for us to put our money where our mouth is and also play our part towards decarbonizing, even with the understanding that decarbonizing our economies will not make a difference to the trajectory, whether it's 1.5 or 2 or 2.6. But we think it's important for us to do that. But from an economic perspective, it's even more important for all the reasons I said before. So marrying that understanding that I have at the climate level, and how do we cause our ambitions in climate to match what we're doing in energy is important. And the third hat I wear is the founder of something called the Caribbean Climate Justice Project and Youth IRE, Youth Innovators for Renewable and Inclusive Energy, where I work with young people and civil society, but predominantly young people, to get them to understand that this fight, although it is being fought by people with gray beards and hair like myself, is really their fight, and they have to get invested and they have to get involved. And so how do we mobilize civil society so that they put that pressure that will cause governments to act a lot more quickly? So I also see myself as a connector, a catalyst, someone who can cause the different players to come together. So this energy transition, which is so important for our economic future, our economic viability, but even more so for our viability as countries, because right now we're heading towards a 2.6 degrees Celsius warmer world. That will be catastrophic for countries in the Pacific. There are countries that will disappear. Countries like Kiribati and the Marshall Islands will disappear. There are islands in the Bahamas that will disappear, but even more so, those warmer temperatures will damage ecosystems, will cause a complete collapse of ecosystems. So I have a vested interest in protecting the livelihoods and the lives of the people in small island developing states. And I see this as giving me another opportunity to do that, and helping ministers to become as passionate about it as I have become over my 15 plus years in this space.
Thank you so much. And yes, also highlighting, I think, the importance of youth and I guess more broadly civil society, because I think ultimately we're also speaking about the shift of renewables for building strong economies, but people-centered economies and environment. So this brings me to the end of this first panel. I would like to thank all of you for your inspiration, your support in building up this initiative, and I look forward to continue working together. We'll have a Q&A session toward the I've seen that we have already received some questions. We'll group them at the end because we are now moving to the second panel. where we will actually have some perspectives from government that are also pushing for renewable energy with rules in governments or in the diplomatic sphere, but also private sector, because it's very clear that when we're speaking about implementation, the transition, it's also about the private sector. So I'm very happy to welcome here my second panel, or panelists for the second panel. We have James Nyopi, who's a economic advisor to the president. James, thanks a lot for joining us. Jennifer Morgan, who's the former state secretary and climate envoy of Germany. And Bruce Douglas, CEO of the Global Renewables Alliance. Hello to all three of you. Very happy to have you with us here for the global presentation of the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative. So let me turn to you first. I think, Jennifer, why not? Yes, I'll start with you. I think the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative obviously is specifically looking at developing emerging economies and targeting basically governments in this region. On the other hand, having, you see, in your role, in your former role from the German government side, obviously you have been very active on the diplomatic side and on pushing the global climate and energy landscape. So I would be really interested to hear your thoughts on why does the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative model matter to really create this momentum, but also probably in this current geopolitical situation.
Oh, thanks so much, Rana, and great to see everyone and be part of this. I think, so much has been said, so I'll share just a few thoughts. I mean, the deployment and scale up of renewables, we know that it is incredibly complex. It's political, it's economic, it's social, communication elements, obviously all of the technical work that's there as well. And I think having an initiative and the leadership of people like Jimmy and Ramón is so important, because some of those barriers are those that one really needs a peer to talk to about. So as Andrea and others said, I think having, and we know we need to accelerate actually the learning that has been going on. So one reason why I think it's important is knowing how we are not on track for the tripling of renewable capacity that we agreed on in Dubai, is how we need to accelerate the learning. And those lessons on peer-to-peer are, I think, multiple. They are in around also not just the technical pieces, which I think are important, and political leaders can identify what those are and then set people off to do that, but how to build the winning political coalition. What are the narratives and the stories that can resonate in country, in similar countries, and doing some matchmaking, I'm sure, is what you're looking at as well, so that you're really having the champions be speaking in other countries if it's about the domestic side of things, where the lessons that they have in their countries, some of them will be applicable everywhere, of course, but others might be specific to a region. And then identifying the strategies to overcome those challenges. And I think, yes, it essential for in-country. The other thing I think it could be quite useful for is to be reaching out to the financial actors. We know that renewables, needs specific different financial tools in order to deploy it. I'll never forget President Ruto saying, 8 times more expensive to build renewables in Africa than in Europe. So I think the champions experience and then also going and talking both to financial institutions, including private banks and multilateral development banks, but also to contributing countries about, okay, what is needed where do we need to bring down risk, so we need different kinds of guarantees, how do we actually get the matchmaking and the investment to flow, and in a way to share those experiences and be funneling those in from a perspective of having had very successful work domestically to actually get some concrete projects, more concrete projects, I should say, going. And not only the renewables ones, but the thing I've just been hearing over and over, which is such an obvious point, but is that countries are looking for a space in the value chain. So how countries can be participating in the value chain through renewable energy. And I think maybe just last, because I'm keen to listen to James and to Bruce, I think the public piece of this is also incredibly important. And we are going on the international level into a COP where what happens on energy, I think, is going to be very important and can get attention. But domestically, to have credible messengers like the champions who have been through it, to be sharing the benefits of it, why it's needed, but also just how quite specifically it's been working in their countries and the benefits that have come from it, I think is very needed and inspiring, because we know that the PR machine on the fossil side, if I may be so blunt, is large. So having those champions out there is really key, and magnifying all of us magnifying those voices. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I think it's very good to be blunt when we're speaking about these things, because I think it's clearly showing that it's inspiring, it's happening, but we also have challenges we're facing, and we can probably only face them if we join forces. And I think your comment on basically the role in the supply chains is here, or the space in the value chains through renewable energy, is a really good segue to you, James. Namibia is clearly one of the government that is engaging on renewable energy, but also on renewable energy as a driver for economic development, industrialization. I think it would be really interesting to hear from your side. So over the last years, the pathway, the learning, what is actually the kind of support, political, financial, institutional, that is needed by governments to meaningfully act on the transitions? So if you could share your experiences here, and also share a bit like Namibia's pathway, but then also building on this, really how you think that the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative can help achieve basically the transition, accelerate the transition, and also meet the needs of developing countries, or help them specifically to become, to participate in the space in the value chain.
Sure. Thanks a lot. And look, it's always useful to give some context about Namibia, right? So it feels like a very big country, 2.5 times the size of Germany, but it's also a very small country, 3 million people. So we have all this renewable energy, but really not enough people to buy it, right? Like if you wanted to mobilize gigawatts of renewable energy into our system, it just wouldn't work. I think we consume about 4.5 terawatt hours of electricity. Our total installed capacity is 300 megawatts, 700 megawatts or so, right? So what do you do with all of that? We're also a country that's very vulnerable to climate change. We get massive wildfires. They destroy the size of Wales, and the droughts are getting bigger, and our largest energy generator is actually a hydroelectric power station. So when we get hit by the droughts, it's the farmers that get hit, we have to subsidize them. At the same time, we're importing electricity from the SAPP on an emergency basis, right? So caught between a rock and a hard place. You have to do something about climate, but we're a net carbon sink, so we're not the cause of it, etc. So we came up with a strategy that said, look, can we use these renewables actually to build new industrial clusters that will do the decarbonization for the EU, right? Because Tokyo and Germany and, I don't know, let's pick one more country, the Dutch, the Netherlands, they don't have the land that we do, but they need the products that we could make. So they'll need the molecules to decarbonize shipping, steel, and other industries. So that was the approach. And of course, that was a beautiful philosophical approach. But once you got into the weeds of it, you had to get into the details of each business case. And that matters a lot. I think even for us in Namibia, even as we're sort of championing a lot of, support for this approach, we're really trying to teach our communities about bankability, right? So in Namibia today, we've got a project that's exploring green fertilizer, one that's exploring green shipping fuel, and one that's exploring decarbonizing steel, right? So doing green DRI. And it's actually been a fantastic, to be honest, opportunity for us as a country, because we've started realizing how to mobilize concessional capital and how that then actually has an impact on the cost of the product, whether that's LCOH, LCOE, or the price per kilogram of DRI that you make. So we've spent a lot of time honing in on fit for purpose capital. We applied for the SIF funding, for example, which is the Climate Investment Funds put out a call in October last year, putting $1 billion on the line for any country that wants to decarbonize hard to abate sectors. So the truth of the matter is Namibia did not belong there at all, because everyone who applied were significant emitters, right? And have massive hard to abate sectors. India, Brazil, you name it, right? South Africa. Namibia has no emissions, but yet we applied, and not only did we apply, but we came third in the world. Brazil was number 1, Mexico number 2, and we were number 3. And for that, we got up to, we have now been asked to put together what they're calling a sectoral transformation plan, and we are mobilizing $250 million that can have a tenor of up to 30 years, a cost of capital of 1.1, and a grace period of 8%. And the idea is to use that money as a foundation for building a $1 billion fund that can decarbonize hard to abate sectors. Why am I going on about the funding? First of all, for us, that's just FDI, right? So as an economic advisor, I'm mobilizing significant foreign direct investment in our country to decarbonize your countries, and not sort of thinking of it as, well, it's your job, you should do it, I'm saying I could help you, but I could probably become rich by doing it. I don't know about rich, but we could make some money. And then the idea is, on top of that SIF funding, we can then mobilize money from the multilateral development banks, hence we get to $1 billion. The other side of all this is now we've got a green hydrogen scholarship program running in Namibia 3 years in a row. We've now put more than 183 of our own through master's programs, PhD programs, technical vocational training programs, and the likes. And you've got a project like High Iron that has hired more than 60 Namibian SMEs to build the world's first direct reduced iron plant of its own. So we've started seeing some early, projects, new products coming out, new offtake markets, new skills for Namibia. And we're now sort of saying, hey, this kind of worked out fairly well for Namibia, but we know that Mauritania, Egypt, South Africa, Kenya want to do the same. So the green hydrogen program that I run today, the idea is we want to transform that into the African Sustainable Industrialization Institute. And the reason for that is we're going from this mentality of decarbonizing, always on the defense, right? Fighting for climate change. And we're saying, can we build industrial clusters of tomorrow in Africa, given our unique characteristics? And then the idea is I sort of want to go from going to Jennifer and all of you guys and asking for grant funding to get this going. But now I'm going to, the wealthiest Africans, right? So, for example, Dangote put together this group called the Africa Renaissance Retreat that met in September in Rwanda. It's Africa's 50 billionaires, right? And they said, we want to do something for the continent. We've made our money. Of course, it has to have a return, but something transformative. So I'm going to them to say, I've got money from SIF, World Bank, AFDB to mobilize capital into these innovative projects in Namibia and beyond. Would you fund some of these interventions? And that's why the Africa Sustainable Industrialization Institute is so important, is we're now looking to go into other African countries and then start building dynamic industrial clusters. So that's really the work we're doing. And I'm hoping that it changes, I think, the mindset of what we should be doing with renewable electrons. I could talk a little bit more about the offtake and how that matters, but
yes, But
And
we'll have
we have-
another session specifically on Namibian tips. Thank you.
Sure.
Sorry, but before going to Bruce, because I would be obviously given the Renewable Energy Champions initiative here and the champions, because especially when you're also reaching out to other governments, you see, like as a leader in the region, the question also is, so for the moment we have like the two champions in Latin America and Caribbean. The idea is obviously to grow this network and also bring African champions in. But the question is really like, for you, how is the role basically of former ministers and political leaders strategic also in broadening this and building this understanding? So how can you partner? Very quickly before we move to Bruce, quick answer.
Very
Thank you.
quickly, policy, right? So, you know, to do what we were able to do in Namibia, we had to work very closely with our ministers to start putting in place new policies to attract things that were very difficult to build in Namibia. In a couple of days, we'll get climate parliamentarians visiting Namibia, and these parliamentarians are working with Namibian parliamentarians to understand the sort of policy interventions that we developed. So, you know, working with the renewable energy champions, it would be to help our policymakers, but also those in the region, to sort of move away from, if possible, and I'm saying this obviously with all due respect, like, you know, like very emotive, perhaps interventions, to like very calculated, policy-driven ones that are very focused on bankability. I was in Kenya, I think 3-4 weeks ago at a TED Talk, and that's why I couldn't attend your other meeting, Rana. But I met people there called RELP, R-E-L-P. The owner is called Sebastian Kind. And what he did in Argentina is absolutely transformative. And now he's got funding from the Bezos Foundation, Rockefeller, to do the same in other emerging market nations. So working with people like them and the renewable energy champions to help parliamentarians in Argentina, Kenya, Namibia, South Africa, and others begin to have a much more business-focused mindset about, I think, the energy transition is critical. And ASI would love to work with you to help Africans speak with Africans to build money-making businesses that use renewables and molecules to build the industries of the future. Thanks.
Thank you so much, James. I think this is a perfect leeway to you, right, Bruce? Building up the business cases. So I think it's would be interesting. I'll just group the questions like how can the private sector basically engage strategically with the Renewable Champions Initiative to, I think, improve and increase and position renewables as a business case. You see, like, and then also being really interested how you think that the Renewable Champions Initiative can also complement the Global Renewables Alliance ongoing efforts to drive renewable deployment, support sustainable economic development worldwide, not only have the ambition, but also the action, as it's written on your background, I think. Bruce, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rana, and what an honor to be here. You know, and great to see you again, James, Jennifer. I loved your statement about, you know, about the money, making money should not be a crime. But really great to see some of my real heroes and friends here. Jimmy, Ramón, we've known each other for quite some time, but congratulations on this initiative. And huge gratitude to philanthropy for support. I can't think of a better place than REN21 to house this. I looked up the definition of champion just before joining the call. I didn't use ChatGPT, I used the dictionary, which is quite old school. But it says, and I'll quote, "A person who vigorously supports or defends a cause and past all rivals." I think that pretty much defines Jimmy and Ramón. But what it doesn't say, unfortunately, is that what it should say is, in addition, that they also pass on experience and lessons. And for us, the private sector, that is the key. And several people have mentioned it today, including Jimmy and Ramón, about that real world delivery, lessons learned in order to accelerate and diversify renewables. And there's so much there that's valuable for us. I give you a big virtual hug, Ramón and Jimmy, for what you've done for us already. I can give several examples. The op-ed you just did, Ramón, supporting renewable energy. Jimmy, the work you've done in the Caribbean with us on those 14 countries is absolutely critical. What you bring for us is credibility and expertise. So whereas the renewables industry can say more renewables, but that's one thing. When we get champions such as yourself saying it, it has so much more value. You bring trust and credibility to those discussions. So policymakers, often we're seen by us, the private sector, as the enemies. You know, we need to persuade you and cajole you and get you to do things. I mean, you are the enablers. You know, you are really those who can persuade the policymakers to move away from what we're seeing today, which is delay, distraction, disinformation. So we need your voice powerfully there. And then on to your question about GRA, Rana. Obviously, we're pushing for the tripling of renewables, time for action. It's not happening fast enough, as Jennifer said. I think that, again, is where the champions can come in. Many people claim credit for the quote, you know, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they join you, then you win. In the middle there is then they fight you. That's where we're at right now. We're in a battle. And all of us collectively, and I mean that, you know, the multi-stakeholder strength of REN21, we need to fight. And I won't say that Jimmy and Ramón are weapons, but, you know, in the nicest possible sense, that's what they are. We can deploy them and use them to fight this battle of information, of credibility, and access to political influence. So again, thank you so much to you, Rana, for hosting it, and Philanthropy for supporting it. We've got so much we can do with them as the private sector, especially in those regions that, as Jennifer said, are not being supported with renewables so far, and look forward to doing that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I think because we are unfortunately running out of time, but we have a Q&A session. And so I ask you to stay on the virtual panel here. I'll ask the first panel to join us. We'll have lots of faces on the screen. And I'm heading over to you, Hala. I would like to thank basically all 7 of you for joining the discussion and bringing the different perspectives. And from REN21's side, very clearly looking forward to working together and move from individual weapons for the good, I guess, to mass weapons altogether to win this fight and thrive. So thrive with renewables, I guess. Thanks a lot. Hala, over to you for the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, everyone. This was really inspiring, and I'm very happy to see also from the audience people joining from different regions and sectors. So yeah, anyone who has a question, please either raise your hand, jump in, or put in the chat. We have a few questions in the chat. I have from Gwyn Foster from South Africa. Are there any initiatives looking at identifying the status and availability and sources of energy to agricultural production areas? A key factor is location and the identification to meet reporting requirements in the carbon economy. Anyone would like to take this?
I can maybe say something on it if you want.
Yeah,
were they from
please go ahead.
Africa?
South Africa, yeah.
Great. So if they come visit us up north, we're their neighbor, sort of 2-hour flight. There is a project in Namibia that's trying to do a little bit about this. So it's called RS, Green Hydrogen Village. They've received funding, and they've built essentially a project that is using renewable energy to make ammonia sulfate. Okay, and then with that fertilizer, there is one of the more advanced, I would argue, greenhouses in Namibia. And they're using solar to then sort of run the pumps, produce clean water, run a sort of mini desalination plant. And it's an enclosed project that has zero reliance on the grid. And it's basically trying to decarbonize fertilizer production and at the same time trying to reduce the carbon footprint of any of our agricultural produce. And then the most important part of it all is because they're using fairly sophisticated technology, drip irrigation and others, not only is their water consumption very low, but within the AI-controlled greenhouses, the climatic conditions are so controlled that the yield from their plantation is insane. So, I mean, that would be a very interesting projects to learn from. It is donor funded, so it's very open for people to come, and we've gotten UNIDO is now sponsoring it, and we get people from around the world looking to study that model. So we'd be happy to share the learnings for that. But you can find a lot of the information online. It's called Dauris Green Hydrogen Village. I'll put it in the chat. Thanks, Hala.
Okay, Hala seems to be frozen, so I'll jump in. There's a question on how to basically suggest new champions or other champions. Not new, but more. Okay, I'll answer from REN21 maybe first, but then also I think Rebecca, Andrea, you might have a specific thoughts. Obviously, like reaching out to the REN21 Secretariat, drop us a message. We'll organize you see a discussion and exchange, and then obviously also have discussions with the champions, but also with the advisory committee, so to say, Rebecca and Andrea. Rebecca.
Yeah, just to echo that. So we're really particularly looking for people who can inspire along the same lines as we've heard today. And the purpose and the vision, I think, could not be clearer. And so we have an advisory committee. The secretariat is REN21. So please write to REN21, the organizers of today's session, or to, I mean, Andrea and I, if you need a private conversation with philanthropy on this. We are always looking for women. I mean, I think Andrea and I will say that. And we're also looking for people from Asia and from the African continent as well. So those are our dreams, but we have no exclusions either. And I just wanted to respond also to the previous question about agricultural uses of renewable energy. And just to share that I was 2 weeks ago in Nairobi. James and I were on a panel about green hydrogen. But we heard so much about agricultural use of renewable energy and the benefits it's bringing in terms of irrigation and land use to communities all over the world, that it really blew my mind that we have so few spatial planning tools at our disposal to really scale the potentials. And so I just wanted to say that a whole new horizon is opening up on this topic. And it's another one for partnership that I think is very right. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
The only thing I'll add is the importance of it being energy ministers, or it could be a former state-owned enterprise head, or the importance of the person being from the energy sector and having direct experience from the energy sector versus, for example, ministers of environment who have enormous value, obviously, on their own, but the dynamic and the discussions are a bit different than the ones that we're trying to achieve here with sector experts and leaders in other countries. So that would be my only bit to add. We're really looking forward to expanding this to have other brilliant, hopefully women, as Rebecca said, from other regions.
Thank you.
Hala, you're back. Excellent.
Yes, sorry, I was kicked out.
We switched
the
seats.
Internet. Any other questions? I don't see, except Eduardo saying energy equals water equals food security, obviously, in terms of the agricultural discussion. But any other questions, please jump in.
And I guess like even between the panels, don't hesitate to ask yourself, because I'm pretty sure that the first panel had questions for a second and vice versa. So Bruce. Oh, sorry, Hala.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Hala. I've got a question for Jimmy and Ramón. What's next? What are you doing next?
That's an excellent question, Bruce. We right now are mapping out the diplomatic opportunities that we think are necessary for us to insert ourselves in. This launch is extremely important because now we're known to the world. I mean, we did have a launch in the Caribbean, but that was kind of limited to the Caribbean. Although there were many people there, the multilateral development banks and quite a few others were there. So we're now mapping out where the next places. I think some places immediately present themselves. So, for example, in New York with Climate Week and everybody who is gathered in New York for Climate Week and the UNGA, I think that gives us an excellent opportunity to not just do it on our own, but partner with some of our partners who will be in New York for Climate Week, so we can do something where we speak about not just the Renewable Energy Champions initiative, but really the importance of the energy transition in the respective regions. So that's something we're looking at. We've coming out of the meetings we had at CREF, there's some islands that have said to us that they want us to come in and work with them immediately. So Grenada, St. Lucia, we met with finance sector in Barbados, who are quite keen, and also Turks and Caicos from the regulatory side. So we've kind of mapped out where we're going in the Caribbean. We now, and Ramón is in the process of working out, particularly with Oladi, how do we ensure that we have a presence there and see what are the opportunities in Oladi that are sanctioned by Oladi. I think Ramón knows what needs to be done in Latin America, but it's a matter of the Latin American countries saying that they need us to come in and help them on this.
Thank you, Jimmy. Ramón.
Yeah, let me add on that. So I think we have two parallel works, Bruce. To be honest, the first one is continue doing what we did in the Caribbean. Now we have Latin America. It's much bigger. We have a lot of other difficulties there, but also a lot of opportunities there. This is one part. But the other part is that, as you know, Bruce, we are just door openers. This is what you are doing right now. I mean, just using our experience, our contacts, etc., trying to knock doors and try them to be open. But then you come with us, because as Jennifer was saying, this is a holistic point. It's not just technical, economic, political, it's everything together, geopolitical, everything is together. So we cannot go just by ourselves. I mean, we have to just open doors, and then the whole ecosystem come with us to a given country in order to make it possible. All the experience of these tremendous networks, and this is not by chance that you are here in this luncheon today, because in fact we are part of a tremendous network of organizations from governments, private sector, NGOs, academy, funders, that we have to work together in order for things to be possible. So this is what is coming now. We have to act as a tremendous group as we are in order to take profit of the opportunities of the door that can be most open after the beginning of our work.
Thank you so much. And Bruce is hosting high-level roundtables in New York. You are invited. We have a question from Michael. Would you want to come in, Michael? Unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, it's afternoon here in Nigeria. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael. I work at GIZ, and I'm a PhD candidate with a special interest in renewable energy financing. And I have been, yes, I do research, and I see even at GIZ amount of funds that go into resources that go into energy transition, but I'm looking at a very small unit, the tertiary institution area. And then I would want to know if there are special targeted effort to I mean, renewable energy now, maybe solar or stuff like that, focus effort in the universities, which could help both research and then access to power all at the same time. That kind of targeted effort. Are there effort in that direction, maybe towards the sub-Saharan Africa? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Who would like to come in? Rebecca, Andrea, maybe James?
Yeah, Jimmy, please. Perhaps you can make it.
There are actually two Jameses. There's Jimmy and James.
Maybe over to you, James, and yeah. And
Sure. So I guess and maybe just to clarify the question for me, Hala, I was supposed to clarify on the sort of progress we're making in sub-Saharan Africa. Is that right?
yes,
From
financing
renewable
efforts.
for net zero efforts?
Finance efforts, I think I heard.
Financing efforts.
Yeah.
So let's look at a practical example, right? So if you're looking at sub-Saharan Africa, well, it's a big area, but let's look at, say, for example, the SADC area, which is the SAPP, right? And again, if you just look at SADC, both South Africa and Namibia actually applied for the financing I was talking about, the SIF financing. And of course, both of us are involved in putting together a financing scheme for the SAPP, which I think is useful to think about. So the SAPP is the Southern African Power Pool, right? So it basically is a bunch of countries that come together to buy electrons from each other. Why is that strategic? I've come to realize that, and by the way, they're actually doing work with RELP on this to design, for example, a bespoke guarantee mechanism for any IPPs that wants to deploy electrons into the SAPP. Why is that useful? Putting together this guarantee mechanism reduces the cost that if I build electricity, sort of like renewable energy to sell into the SAPP, it reduces the probability that there's a default. Why that is important is it reduces your cost of financing from banks, and that then actually reduces your cost of capital and it makes your electricity more affordable. Now, beginning to pull multiple off-takers like that, and then intervening in a way that reduces the risk of supplying those people with clean electrons is massively transformative, not just in renewable energy adoption, because really the idea is you don't just want to deploy renewable energy because it's great for climate. You want to do it because it's convenient, it's easy, and it's actually the cheapest form of energy, especially once you start coupling it with batteries and other renewables in the region, such as hydro. It's actually just the most strategic thing to do from an industrialization and a job creation perspective as well. It also typically is more labor intensive, for example, than just doing hydrocarbons. We're learning that the hard way as well in Namibia. So that's something I'd like to encourage us to do a bit more. If we start talking sub-Saharan Africa, I go to Europe and they talk about international projects of common European interest, IPCEI. They group them together, they identified that they're strategic for Europe, and then they mobilize strategic funding to accelerate the permitting and the development of those projects, because they realize that a 300-kilometer or 23,000-kilometer hydrogen backbone is good for various European countries instead of just, say, Belgium, where it'll start from. And I think that sort of thinking can be championed more and more in Africa. I think we think about that sometimes in terms of transmission lines, but can we do that with pipelines as well, so we can move molecules between each other and start to build much more complete industrial classes. Maybe that'll be my small contribution, Hala, but I see Ramón also wants to say something, so I'll pass over to him. Ramón?
Yes, go ahead, please, Ramón.
Yeah, thank you, Hala. Well, in fact, this point of financing is absolutely crucial, because renewable energies, at the end of the day, is just a financial business, because everything has to do with the cost of capital. So for countries that we succeeded to make the transition, the most important recommendation was that we really need to do risk investment. And the risk in investment, it means a lot of things that need to be done. First of all, with this guarantees fund, yes, this is crucial, of course, but also all the national environment that you are creating, all the stability of your institutions, the long term, having a long-term strategy for the transition, having as much as possible a comprehensive agreement between all political parties represented in the country. All of this is crucial in order to de-risk the perception, to diminish the risk perception by investors. In our case, for example, in Uruguay, we received $6 billion in only 5 years. And this, for a small economy, represented something like 12% of the GDP of the country. And this is not by chance. This is because we created the appropriate conditions for money to flow. So when we have in the global south these difficulties in attracting investments, the most important comment is that we have to de-risk our economy. We have to de-risk our energy programs. So there are a bunch, today there are a bunch of different mechanisms that you can put together in order to de-risk your transition process. And this is exactly the kind of message that we expect to deliver with Jimmy. I mean, how we can share the successful experiences that have been developed so far in order to de-risk to diminish the risk perception by investment in order to attract investment to the country. And once again, renewables are the best option for the national level in almost every country all over the world. So the point is to create the appropriate conditions for this benefits of renewables to be possible. And for that, when this is done, money will flow. So this is the most important message I would like to share. That's why, once again, I understand that working with governments, as Jennifer, or with private sector as Bruce, is absolutely crucial in the work we are supposed to do, because this is the way to all together to create the prepared conditions for investors to come to a given country.
Thank you very much. We have 3 minutes, and I think it's time for us to close. I'll invite Rana, Ramón, and Jimmy for any closing statements about the Renewable Energy Champions Initiative and this event, and thank everyone who have contributed to this inspiring conversation. Rana, Ramón, Jimmy, final words.
Okay, I'll just start from my side. So thanks a lot to all. I think the way you always say, Ramón, we have it all. So everything is there. It is, however, not happening spontaneously, as you also said. And I think the initiative here is very clearly about bringing basically the different pieces together, whether it is basically the leadership, the trust, the inspiring voices, and real experiences. But policy, finance, business cases. And I think by joining forces, we will be able to deliver and clearly support basically the system or create a support system also to governments to catalyze more leadership and build a renewable-based economy. So I think this is where from REN21’s side and Secretariat, we really look forward to working with all of you, and we invite all of you to specifically, the members, the partners, to support this effort. Reach out to us if you see opportunities. Don't hesitate basically to opportunities to engage with governments, to bring the champions in for supporting different initiatives, suggesting new champions, more champions, not new, but more, sorry, I did it a second time, and invite the champions to engage in the process. And then I just think it's always good to give the champions the last word. So Ramón and Jimmy, over to you.
Just to finish, I just wanted to thank once again Rebecca and Andrea for the confidence that you made on us. This is very important. Thank you for REN21 for this extraordinary support. And I would like to especially thank participants here today, Bruce, Jennifer, and James, to be part of this. And my only message is that you can count on us. That's it.
Right, and I deliberately chose to go last so I wouldn't have too much to say. Everybody has said it already. Just really to say again, to echo the thanks, but also to say that this is something that we're building. we were a little uncomfortable in the beginning when we were trying to come up with a nomenclature, because suggesting that we're champions kind of suggests that we have capes and we can do everything, which we don't. So we really need this entire ecosystem to be with us. And I'm very happy to see the wide range of people on this call today. We would like this ecosystem to grow because we need your support to do it. We need your support to do it, not just in Latin America and the Caribbean, but in all of the other regions that we have identified. This transition is so important for so many different reasons. So, you know, please, as Rana said, whatever ideas you have, however you would like to support, whatever we can be, wherever we can participate and help to grow this and to reach a wider audience, please call on us. We are available, and we are willing to come on board and help. So look forward to the next few months. I think it's going to be really exciting.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all the panels, speakers, audience. Thank you very much, and look forward to discussing more. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Gotcha, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.